Praise the Lord. According to 1 year Bible reading plan day 100, we have 2 Kings chapters 15 to 17. 2 Kings chapter 15. In the 27th year of the reign of King Jeroboam II of Israel, Uzziah son of Amaziah became king of Judah at the age of 16, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 52 years. His mother was Jecoliah from Jerusalem. Following the example of his father, he did what was pleasing to the Lord. But the pagan places of worship were not destroyed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. The Lord struck Uzziah with a dreaded skin disease that stayed with him the rest of his life. He lived in a separate house, relieved all of duties, while his son Jotham governed the country. Everything else that Uzziah did is recorded in the history of the kings of Judah. Uzziah died and was buried in the royal burial ground in David's city, and his son Jotham succeeded him as king. In the 38th year of the reign of King Uzziah of Judah, Zechariah, son of Jeroboam II, became king of Israel, and he ruled in Samaria for 6 months. He, like his predecessors, sinned against the Lord. He followed the wicked example of King Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into sin. Shallum, son of Jabesh, conspired against Zechariah, assassinated him at Ibleam, and succeeded him as king. Everything else that Zechariah did is recorded in the history of the kings of Israel. So the promise was fulfilled which the Lord had made to King Jehu. Your descendants down to the 4th generation will be kings of Israel. In the 39th year of the reign of King Uzziah of Judah, Shallum son of Jabesh became king of Israel, and he ruled in Samaria for 1 month. Menahem son of Gadi went from Tirzah to Samaria, assassinated Shallum, and succeeded him as king. Everything else that Shallum did, including an account of his conspiracy, is recorded in the history of the kings of Israel. As Menahem was on his way from Tirzah, he completely destroyed the city of Tappuah, its inhabitants, and the surrounding territory, because the city did not surrender to him. He even ripped open the bellies of all the pregnant women. In the 39th year of the reign of King Uzziah of Judah, Menahem, son of Gadi, became king of Israel, and he ruled in Samaria for 10 years. He sinned against the Lord, for until the day of his death he followed the wicked example of King Jeroboam son of Nebat, who led Israel into sin. Tiglath-Pileser, the emperor of Assyria, invaded Israel, and Menahem gave him 38 tons of silver to gain his support in strengthening Menahem's power over the country. Menahem got the money from the rich men of Israel by forcing each one to contribute 50 pieces of silver. So Tiglath-Pileser went back to his own country. Everything else that Menahem did is recorded in the history of the kings of Israel. He died and was buried, and his son Pekahiah succeeded him as king. In the 50th year of the reign of King Uzziah of Judah, Pekahiah son of Menahem became king of Israel, and he ruled in Samaria for 2 years. He sinned against the Lord, following the wicked example of King Jeroboam son of Nebat, who led Israel into sin. An officer of Pekahiah's forces, Pekah son of Remaliah, plotted with 50 men from Gilead, assassinated Pekahiah in the palace's inner fortresses in Samaria, and succeeded him as king. Everything else that Pekahiah did is recorded in the history of the kings of Israel. In the 52nd year of the reign of King Uzziah of Judah, Pekah, son of Remaliah, became king of Israel, and he ruled in Samaria for 20 years. He sinned against the Lord, following the wicked example of King Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into sin. It was while Pekah was king that Tiglath-Pileser, the emperor of Assyria, captured the cities of Ijon, Abel-Beth-maachah, Janoah, Kedesh, and Hazor, and the territories of Gilead, Galilee, and Naphtali, and took the people to Assyria as prisoners. In the 20th year of the reign of Jotham, son of Uzziah, as king of Judah, Hoshea, son of Elah, plotted against King Pekah, assassinated him, and succeeded him as king. Everything else that Pekah did is recorded in the history of the kings of Israel. In the 2nd year of the reign of Pekah, son of Remaliah, as king of Israel, Jotham, son of Uzziah, became king of Judah at the age of 25, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 16 years. His mother was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. Following the example of his father Uzziah, Jotham did what was pleasing to the Lord, but the pagan places of worship were not destroyed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. It was Jotham who built the north gate of the temple. Everything else that Jotham did is recorded in the history of the kings of Judah. It was while he was king that the Lord first sent King Rezin of Syria and King Pekah of Israel to attack Judah. Jotham died and was buried in the royal tombs in David's city, and his son Ahaz succeeded him as king. 2 Kings chapter 16. In the 17th year of the reign of Pekah, son of Remaliah, as king of Israel, Ahaz, son of Jotham, became king of Judah at the age of 20, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 16 years. He did not follow the good example of his ancestor King David. Instead, he did what was not pleasing to the Lord his God and followed the example of the kings of Israel. He even sacrificed his own son as a burnt offering to idols, imitating the disgusting practice of the people whom the Lord had driven out of the land as the Israelites advanced. At the pagan places of worship, on the hills and under every shady tree, Ahaz offered sacrifices and burnt incense. King Rezin of Syria and King Pekah of Israel attacked Jerusalem and besieged it, but could not defeat Ahaz. At the same time, the king of Edom regained control of the city of Elath and drove out the Judeans who lived there. The Edomites settled in Elath and still live there. Ahaz sent men to Tiglath-Pileser, the emperor of Assyria, with this message: I am your devoted servant. Come and rescue me from the kings of Syria and of Israel who are attacking me. Ahaz took the silver and gold from the temple and the palace treasury and sent it as a present to the emperor. Tiglath-Pileser, in answer to Ahaz's plea, marched out with his army against Damascus, captured it, killed King Rezin, and took the people to Kir as prisoners. When King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Emperor Tiglath-Pileser, he saw the altar there and set back to Uriah the priest an exact model of it, down to the smallest details. So Uriah built an altar just like it and finished it before Ahaz returned. On his return from Damascus, Ahaz saw that the altar was finished. So he burnt animal sacrifices and grain offerings on it, and poured a wine offering and the blood of a fellowship offering on it. The bronze altar dedicated to the Lord was between the new altar and the temple. So Ahaz moved it to the north side of his new altar. Then he ordered Uriah, using this large altar of mine, for the morning burnt offerings and the evening grain offerings, for the burnt offerings and grain offerings of the king and the people, and for the people's wine offerings. Pour on it the blood of all the animals that are sacrificed, but keep the bronze altar for me to use for divination. Uriah did as the king commanded. King Ahaz took apart the bronze carts used in the temple and removed the basins that were on them. He also took the bronze tank from the backs of the 12 bronze bulls and placed it on a stone foundation. And in order to please the Assyrian emperor, Ahaz also removed from the temple the platform for the royal throne and closed up the king's private entrance to the temple. Everything else that King Ahaz did is recorded in the history of the kings of Judah. Ahaz died and was buried in the royal tombs in David's city, and his son Hezekiah succeeded him as king. 2 Kings chapter 17. In the 12th year of the reign of King Ahaz of Judah, Hoshea son of Elah became king of Israel, and he ruled in Samaria for 9 years. He sinned against the Lord, but not as much as the kings who had ruled Israel before him. Emperor Shalmaneser of Assyria made war against him. Hoshea surrendered to Shalmaneser and paid him tribute every year. But one year Hoshea sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, asking for his help, and stopped paying the annual tribute to Assyria. When Shalmaneser learned of this, he had Hoshea arrested and put in prison. Then Shalmaneser invaded Israel and besieged Samaria. In the 3rd year of the siege, which was the 9th year of the reign of Hoshea, the Assyrian emperor captured Samaria, took the Israelites to Assyria as prisoners, and settled some of them in the city of Hala, some near the Habor River in the district of Gozan, and some in the cities of Media. Samaria fell because the Israelites sinned against the Lord their God, who had rescued them from the king of Egypt and had led them out of Egypt. They worshipped other gods, followed the customs of the people whom the Lord had driven out, as his people advanced and adopted customs introduced by the kings of Israel. The Israelites did things that the Lord their God disapproved of. They built pagan places of worship in all their towns, from the smallest village to the largest city, on all the hills and under every shady tree. They put up stone pillars and images of the goddess Asherah, and they burnt incense on all the pagan altars, following the practice of the people whom the Lord had driven out of the land. They aroused the Lord's anger with all their wicked deeds, and disobeyed the Lord's command not to worship idols. The Lord had sent his messengers and prophets to warn Israel and Judah. Abandon your evil ways and obey my commands, which are contained in the law I gave to your ancestors, and which I handed on to you through my servants the prophets. But they would not obey. They were stubborn like their ancestors, who had not trusted in the Lord their God. They refused to obey his instructions. They did not keep the covenant he had made with their ancestors, and they disregarded his warnings. They worshipped worthless idols and became worthless themselves, and they followed the customs of the surrounding nations, disobeying the Lord's command not to imitate them. They broke all the laws of the Lord their God and made 2 metal bull calves to worship. They also made an image of the goddess Asherah, worshipped the stars, and served the god Baal. They sacrificed their sons and daughters as burnt offerings to pagan gods. They consulted mediums and fortune tellers, and they devoted themselves completely to doing what is wrong in the Lord's sight, and so aroused his anger. The Lord was angry with the Israelites and banished them from his sight, leaving only the kingdom of Judah. But even the people of Judah did not obey the laws of the Lord their God. They imitated the customs adopted by the people of Israel. The Lord rejected all the Israelites, punishing them and handing them over to cruel enemies until at last he had banished them from his sight. After the Lord had separated Israel from Judah, the Israelites made Jeroboam son of Nebat their king. Jeroboam caused them to abandon the Lord and led them into terrible sins. They followed Jeroboam and continued to practice all the sins he had committed, until at last the Lord banished them from his sight, as he had warned through his servants, the prophets, that he would do. So the people of Israel were taken into exile to Assyria, where they still live. The emperor of Assyria took people from the cities of Babylon, Cuth, Eva, Hamath, and Sepharvaim, and settled them in the cities of Samaria in place of the exiled Israelites. They took possessions of these cities and lived there. When they first settled there, they did not worship the Lord, and so he sent lions, which killed some of them. The emperor of Assyria was told that the people he had settled in the cities of Samaria did not know the law of the God of that land, and so the God had sent lions which were killing them. So the emperor commanded, "Send back one of the priests we brought as prisoners. Have him go back and live there, in order to teach the people the law of the God of that land." So an Israelite priest who had been deported from Samaria went and lived in Bethel, where he taught the people how to worship the Lord. But the people who settled in Samaria continued to make their own idols, and they placed them in the shrines that the Israelites had built. Each different group made idols in the cities they were living in. The people of Babylon made idols of the god Succoth Benoth, the people of Cuth idols of Nergal, the people of Hamath idols of Ashima, the people of Eva idols of Nebaz and Tartak, and the people of Sepharvaim sacrificed their children as burnt offering to their gods Adramelech and Anamelech. These people also worshipped the Lord and chose from among their own number all sorts of people to serve as priests at the pagan places of worship and to offer sacrifices for them there. So they worshipped the Lord, but they also worshipped their own gods according to the customs of the countries from which they had come. They still carry on their old customs to this day. They do not worship the Lord, nor do they obey the laws and commands which he gave to the descendants of Jacob, whom he named Israel. The Lord had made a covenant with them, and he ordered them, "Do not worship other gods, do not bow down to them or serve them, or offer sacrifices to them. You shall obey me, the Lord, who brought you out of Egypt with great power and strength. You are to bow down to me and offer sacrifices to me. You shall always obey the laws and commands that I wrote for you. You shall not obey other gods, and you shall not forget the covenant I made with you. You shall obey me, the Lord your God, and I will rescue you from your enemies." But those people would not listen, and they continued to follow their old customs. So those people worshipped the Lord, but they also worshipped their idols. And to this day their descendants continue to do the same. May the Lord bless us abundantly. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.